got a controller and hand coffee in his cup.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Backlog Battle. I'm Tennessee, and for the third game in our series, we're going to be talking about F.E.A.R. for the Xbox 360. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, as it greatly helps out the channel, and I truly appreciate it. Alright, well that's enough jibber jabber, let's jump in. F.E.A.R. is a game probably best remembered by one of its main characters, Alma Wade. A creepy young girl in a red dress who shows up at inopportune times to scare the living piss out of you. At least, that's probably the way you remember it. You see, this game does a really good job not providing jump scares. Instead, it leaves the environment, the sound effects, and the pacing of the game to have your mind work against you. You'll know something scary is about to happen, but you won't actually know where to look. And then when you finally see it, it'll disappear. This, for me at least, didn't scare me in a traditional sense, but it did leave me with an unsettled feeling. And I think that's what this game really does a good job in capturing. It's not an in-your-face, I'm gonna scare you type of game, but it's gonna be one that you're actually looking around every corner, and you may know something scary is about to happen, but you don't know where to look, and you don't know what it's gonna be. It gives you that feeling of being watched. As far as the story goes, I feel like this game actually had a really good storyline. With the open and cinematic and the way that the credits come in, it actually felt like I was watching a movie instead of playing a game. There's not a whole lot of cutscenes to expand upon the story. Instead, they used phones that have voicemails on them that you can listen to in the levels. I felt like the phones were well placed, and it never really felt like it took you out of the action for too long. And I actually found myself looking through all the offices because I didn't want to miss any of the backstory. The pacing of the story felt pretty good. I did enjoy the interaction between all the different members of F.E.A.R. on the radio. They didn't give them too much of a backstory or anything you cared too much about, but having that constant radio chatter made it feel like things were going on outside of your own little bubble. It just made it feel like you were a piece of the story and not that the entire story was revolving around you, which if you've ever played an MMO, you know that gets tiring. The combat in F.E.A.R. was pretty fun. The game's received a lot of praise for the AI, and I can see why. The enemies are constantly calling for backup, trying to flank you, and God knows they're grenade hungry. Dodging grenades ended up being the hardest part of the game in my opinion. I played on high difficulty, and while I did die a few times, after dying you could just approach the combat from a different angle or use a different weapon, and it would only take a time or two to figure out how to beat that encounter. I didn't like that the save points were so far spread out that you could play for 10 minutes and then die and have to repeat the same thing over and over again. But all the enemies spawned in the same place, so you could basically just burn them down super fast if you had to, which made it easier to get back to where you were. The health pack system was nice, and finding health when you really needed it felt rewarding. The game did a good job of hiding collectibles in places that were off the beaten path, and for a linear game, that's a pretty big accomplishment. The levels were big, but not too big, and just when you were getting tired of the same scenery, you would take a helo ride over to a new area. The game did reuse a lot of assets. I did get tired of seeing the same two vending machines throughout the whole game, but this was developed in 2005, and the hardware was a bit more limited than today, so I get it. I'm glad that I played the 360 version, as just something about the graphics from that era felt good. The geometry of objects is simple, the textures are good but not ultra realistic. I really like just being able to look at an object and know what it is. I feel like the 360 was good about that. I don't need a coffee pot with 50,000 polygons when you can convey the same thing with about 100. And honestly, I just think the Xbox 360 era graphics hold up really well. There was a pretty good selection of guns, but once you found the ones that were your favorite, you were just going to prioritize them over anything else. I used the particle gun as much as possible. Having the ability to zoom in, slow down time, and just one-shot enemies made the gun a bit overpowered, and I loved it. Watching the soldiers turn into gooey bits and then their skeleton falling to the floor was super satisfying. Aside from that, I used the shotgun the most, followed by whatever gun I could find in my third slot. The rocket launcher was really good for taking down mechs, so I didn't want to waste the ammo in case I came across one. There is melee in the game, and it seemed to work well if you could sneak up on the enemy, but I didn't realize you could do a roundhouse kick until after I beat the game, and happened to glance over it in the user manual. I wish I would have known that because it sounds super cool to slow down time and roundhouse shit kick the piss out of someone. I don't have too many bad things to say about F.E.A.R. The controls were really my biggest annoyance. Aiming down the sights felt awkward. You had to push in the right joystick to aim down the sights, and I kept instinctively pressing the left trigger, which would throw a grenade when I didn't intend to. I also kept trying to switch weapons with Y, which would use a health pack when I didn't mean to. because right bumper was how you switched weapons. Being able to lean left and lean right around corners was pretty cool. However, having it mapped to the left and right D-pads just felt like awkward button placement. Also, there was no audible or visual indicator that would warn you when you were getting low on health, so if you weren't just staring at your health bar, you wouldn't realize you were getting low. The levels would have multiple paths that you could take to get to an objective or start combat with a group of enemies, which seemed nice at first, but ended up making you backtrack more than you needed to. In closing, I would say F.E.A.R has held up really well. There's no single component that makes the game great, but a combination of horror, tactical gameplay, and storytelling that really makes this one shine. It's currently on sale on Steam for $1.99, and I would highly suggest anyone who is a fan of either the horror or FPS genre to check it out. Well, thanks for sticking around. If you've enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you'd like to watch me play through these games live, you can find me over on Twitch. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.